Good morning, everybody. Quite a bit going on right now. Trump is allegedly going to be surrendering this coming Thursday. Also, the presidential debates are going to be tomorrow, at least for the Republicans. Biden's not going to be debating, neither is Trump. You actually have a pretty good lineup of many Republicans who are going to be on stage. Trump is not going to be there. While that's happening, he's going to be interviewing exclusively with Tucker Carlson. I'll give you all an update on it tomorrow, and then, of course, we'll talk about it Thursday morning. And then, of course, Trump gets facing new charges. I want to give my take on a lot of the stuff happening right now. In particular, I want to talk about what's happening with Trump's surrender, some of the rumors that this may make him ineligible to run again for president. Atlantic, for example, is going after this. There were rumors that Gavin Newsom was taking steps to remove Trump's name from the ballot in California. That was actually a fake article. Someone had doctored a Fox News piece and then spread that. It wasn't actually true. But I want to talk to you all about all this stuff because I know there's a lot of noise right now, and let's filter through the noise and separate what's true from what's untrue. And that said, glad to have you all here with me. Briefly, YouTube gave me another strike. I don't know if we're actually publishing there right now because sometimes when they give you a strike, you can't publish for 2 weeks. I'm actually unclear on whether we're actually broadcasting on YouTube today. No, we're still on YouTube, I think. That being said, though, okay, get this. It's crazy. My episode about the Chinese Communist Party and the World Economic Forum and some of the overlap programs they have, they gave that video a strike. I have no idea how that even violates their terms of service. But they've been doing this kind of stuff lately. Google and YouTube rolled out an entire new censorship program. And anything that goes against narratives, like the official narratives on vaccines, not even just that, medical data in general. If you talk about like alternative cancer treatments, they will give you a strike now. They've really broadened it. And also, it's pretty much set up. You can read between the lines in terms of how they're saying it. It's pretty much set up in a way, and this is what it's been criticized as, where anything that deviates from like establishment narrative, at the very least, risks getting censored. And so YouTube and Google at this point, I don't even know what's going on. Even Twitter is getting criticized for this right now. Elon Musk was seen, or Elon Musk is facing some criticism for this, but there were job postings looking for people to help censor disinformation around the elections. So it looks like they're trying to hire some folks for that. It's really bizarre stuff. It's, hey, the value of truth and the value of independent media, right? It's becoming a real rarity now, unfortunately. But that said, let's talk about some real stuff. Let's start off with what's happening with Trump. First of all, he's going to be surrendering on Thursday in Georgia. Let me show you this briefly. Epoch Times has it. It says, former President Donald Trump confirmed on Monday that he will be surrendering to authorities in Fulton County, Georgia on Thursday, August 24th, over the charges he faces for contesting the state's 2020 election results. They're saying they're actually going to book him. They want to do the mug shot. People are saying if they make a mug shot of Trump, I'm making a T-shirt out of it. Not me per se, but some people are saying it. Remember, this is why when he was facing charges in Washington and New York, that they did not do the perp walk. They didn't put him in handcuffs. They didn't try to put him in jail. They didn't go the whole 9 yards with it. They didn't really do the normal things you do when you arrest somebody. At the very least, suggesting they understand constitutional limits on their legal ability to do that, which technically none of this is legal anyways, if you go by the Constitution and executive privilege, right? Trump was still president at the time of which these accusations came about, including all through January 6th. And the president, of course, also has executive privilege to listen to his advisors and choose which of his advisors to take as valid or to disregard. The whole thing is technically on shaky legal ground in general. I won't go over everything again because we've gone over it a bunch of times. I'll do some recaps in the future as things go forward, but generally speaking, none of this is on solid legal ground. Now, remember that they didn't want to do the mugshot in particular in the previous three charges, which, of course, normal legal procedure you would do. The reason they did not do that was because they were worried it would benefit Trump. Now, how do you allege that the court itself is free of partisan politics, not acting out of partisan, you know, partisan interest, not acting in a way that is biased toward the defendant, when they are doing things with the publicly stated intent of not helping them politically? Now, you would think, of course, you'd have to follow these normal procedures. Otherwise, it's outside the boundaries of, again, what would be illegal, meaning it's illegal. But of course, if they're publicly stating that the intent is a bias towards the defendant, that alone could get a case thrown out in some cases. Notably, in Georgia, they're at least saying that they're going to be going through that procedure. And that being said, I'll have to go into this after the break, but I'll go into some other stuff first. There are a lot of people, establishment media, saying the Georgia case in particular, possibly the Washington one, but especially the Georgia one, could make Trump ineligible to run for president again. I'll explain to you why. They're just trying to make big headlines, in my opinion. But I'll explain to you the details of what they're saying, the nuances in it, and why I'd say it's nonsense. We'll talk about that in a minute. That being said, one other thing on this, the judge has set the Georgia bond at $200,000, and Trump is facing some restrictions on his communications. Briefly, let me show you. It says a judge has begun setting bond and release conditions for former President Donald Trump and notably the 18 others with him. Judge Scott McAfee set bond for President Trump at $200,000, which is pocket change for Trump. He can pay it off very easy. It's really just a procedure. They're not gonna, they could have set it at, like, millions and millions of dollars. If they did that, people would say, "Oh, you're interfering with his campaign. He's using campaign finances to defend himself legally. This is money he should be spending out of his own pocket to campaign, and you're interfering with elections." If they set a very high number, that would have been the narrative. By setting a low number, they follow legal procedure, but they also do something else, which is they feed the whole leftist narrative that people say, they want bail reform. In some states, they're talking about getting rid of bail altogether. The narrative is that bail essentially gives a free pass to the wealthy while ensuring that the poor are the ones who have to stay in prison. Now, you could argue, of course, that a wealthy person, if they have to post bail, if they ever get arrested, they might have the money for it. I would argue, be surprised actually, that even a lot of very wealthy people tend to not have a good size savings. It's one of the odd traits we have in our society, where a lot of times lawyers and doctors, they tend to not even fully pay off their student loans. They tend to live above their means or very close to their means. And so oftentimes they're not developing savings like most people might think they would, which is why if they get a divorce or if they, run into some issues with their jobs or something like that, oftentimes they can still run into very difficult situations. Or if they face criminal charges and they lose their jobs. And then, of course, they have to post bail. It's devastating to them financially as well. So, there's a very small percentage of people who can post a very large bail, probably get fired from their jobs, and still be okay. But that narrative aside, they're going to use this in their own political narratives. They're going to be, oh, for Trump, this means nothing. For Trump, bail means nothing, and he's a perfect example of why we need bail reform. That's how the narrative's going to be on this. The other folks with Trump, the 18 others facing charges, it might not be the case. There may, in fact, be some of them among the 18 who do end up having to stay in jail. And that's going to be a real possibility. The optics of that are probably going to look bad for the Democrats and bad for the left, because even if you argue that this is just a normal political procedure, the perception of it is based on partisan politics. And there's no possible way that the image of these trials are going to be separated from politics. Everything being done to Trump and his associates in this case are going to be seen as Democrats versus Republicans, and Democrats persecuting Republicans. And that's how it's going to be across the board pretty much. It notes this, that in addition to requiring the defendants to post the bond amounts, the judge is restricting whom the men can contact and what they can say. This amounts to a partial gag order. It's limited, and let me explain. It says, the defendants shall not communicate in any way, directly or indirectly, about the facts of this case with, and this is the caveat, with known co-defendants or with known witnesses, the documents for all 5 men state. However, they may use attorneys as conduits to contact co-defendants or witnesses, the order states. Now, you would immediately think that that essentially means that, that if they cannot communicate the case with co-defendants or with witnesses, then, basically it's not that limiting. Trump has to avoid talking to the other co-defendants. He can't go and send text messages to the witnesses and say, why you testifying against me? Pence or something like that. Hey, Pensy boy, why are you testifying? You can't do stuff like that. But it's actually a bit broader than that. They are suggesting, both in this case, actually in Washington as well, that even Twitter posts could constitute communications that could be seen by co-defendants or by others and amount to tampering with the court and so on. And so it is limited. This does amount to a threat. It's very similar. Funny enough, it's very similar to the way that Chinese censorship works. With censorship and with even not just censorship, even a lot of the totalitarian policies the Chinese Communist Party has. If you're a business and you go to China, let me use a clear example of this. For Hollywood, the Hollywood censorship rules for this relates to this, and so hear me out. All right, I'll explain how it relates. If you're in Hollywood and you want to make a film that goes to China, there are certain standards you have to follow. For example, you cannot show the Chinese Communist Party in a negative light. You cannot show the U.S. military in a positive light, which is crazy. You cannot. You have to have at least one Chinese actor and at least a semi-prominent role. You have to have one scene shot in China, and there's all kinds of other standards. They don't actually say in terms of content what is banned. What this does is it makes Hollywood studios tend to go above and beyond on censorship, on playing up the CCP image, on pretty much just getting on their knees and bootlicking for the CCP, because they tend to go above and beyond because of the fact that it's not clearly defined, in order to please the CCP and get access to the market. Terrible movies like this, if you watch like the new Godzilla movies and half the movies about China and stuff like that, you can see, once you have eyes to see, you are aware. You'll start to see how many movies play up for the just butter up the CCP. One of the real funny ironies of it is that it also restricts like sex scenes and stuff. And so ironically, Hollywood in some regards has become a bit more clean because they're trying to gain access to that market. But they also have to do things like they have to show core socialist values. And so a lot of the socialism you see in Hollywood comes from that as well. The effect of it is this, though. Studios, once one of them goes above and beyond kowtowing to the CCP, the next studio in line has to meet that same threshold or kowtow even more, because they're competing for limited spots. The Chinese Communist Party will only allow a certain number of films into China per year. And so the films will compete with one another on how much they, bootlick for the CCP, essentially. And that's one of the ways that they maintain their censorship programs, and one of the ways that they create a competitive nature of bowing to the CCP in Hollywood. It's the same thing with these censorship programs. Google does it, for example, where they don't clearly state the standards of what constitutes allowed or not allowed speech. And so you have to kind of guess, meaning your incentive is to over-censor if you want to be careful. When it comes to Trump, for example, while on the surface it's just saying he can't talk to co-defendants or witnesses, in reality it means that he has to double think every tweet he sends. If he's jumping on Truth Social and posting statements, it's at least maybe not for Trump knowing how he is, but at least for everybody else, there's going to be the risk where if he talks about election fraud, if he talks about J6, if he talks about any of these things that he's been campaigning on very heavy and at the very least defending himself on because he's being criticized and attacked in the media and he's campaigning as president, right? He's campaigning to be president of the United States, and those are two of his big talking points and two of the big things that everybody's attacking him on. He has to talk about it. It's going to be the case now where every single time he talks about it, there's a legal threat hanging over him. And so the Georgia case, that's one of the ways it's going to work. That said, something big in terms of what the media is saying right now, that this could actually that the cases, the nature of the cases, could make Trump ineligible to ever hold office ever again. They claim, for example, that even as things currently stand, Trump is beyond the threshold where he could be allowed to run for office again. And they're arguing this based on Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. It's total nonsense. These people are brain dead, in my opinion. I'll explain to you how this works. I shouldn't say that. They're not brain dead. But the threshold on which they would have to use in order to do this would backfire on the left in ways that are so spectacular that I would actually, if Trump would agree to it, I'd be willing to trade him for the sake of what this would give the right. Because essentially it would make socialism illegal and ban just about the entire Democrat Party from ever holding office ever again. And it's hilarious. And I'll explain to you in a minute, but we're going to jump over to Epoch TV first. I'll explain. Katie, we're talking about directed energy weapons. By the way, stay tuned after the episode today. We're going to talk about directed energy weapons. I did a whole episode on space lasers and photon beams and all that stuff yesterday. The military is actually putting these into place now, and who knew that we were facing attacks from the Chinese Communist Party and from Russia on a daily basis using these types of weapons. It's bizarre stuff. I'll show you after this episode, the episode last night, specifically on directed energy weapons. I did a whole episode on it. That said, join us on Epoch TV, those of you on YouTube. 25 cents flash sale right now for the price of a gumball at the supermarket. You can escape censorship. Let me show you a trailer real quick of we'll call it the Capitol Hill tapes because we're on YouTube right now. Something I cannot show you on YouTube, but we're going to show you the trailer at least. After that, of course, we'll jump over to Epoch TV exclusively, then we'll go into some of this other stuff. I will see you there.
So what was the process of actually putting this all together?
Many hours of finding the right camera angles and watching it. The first trouble started just after 1 o'clock.
45 pages, here it is right here. Donald Trump has been indicted.
Somber day for the country.
This all happened before President Trump's speech was over.
The founder of the Oath Keepers militia group is headed to prison for more than 18 years.
His lawyers didn't have this video. The video we're watching right now, his own lawyers did not have. There was a big question of what did the people do who actually did enter the building.
This is where we picked it up with the security footage that is new. At this point, the story dramatically changes.
The New Jersey man who assaulted a Capitol police officer on January 6th has been sentenced.
So this was withheld.
This was not shown to the defense.
That could be considered exculpatory evidence. This doesn't seem like what a lot of the media is showing.
It's going to change narratives no matter what your political perspective is. What we're after is the truth.